You know, on Martin Luther King Day or other days that are symbolic, we often hear very generic statements about civil rights, and they're beautiful and important, but we forget the fact that fighting for equity was a fight, and it took enormous courage. And when I think of what it really took for a mayor of Minneapolis, who was running for Senate at the time, to walk down to the National Democratic Convention and give a speech talking about walking out of the shadows of states' rights and into the bright sunlight of civil rights, that's not some simple platitude. That was explosive rhetoric, and it was deeply complicated politics, but it was so Humphrey. And to me, as somebody who's honored to be able to sit in the same chair as Humphrey, I need to hear those words in a way that resonates today. So I often hear those words and think about the fact that this man who was about civil rights, this man who took over as mayor of the most anti-Semitic city in the country, this man who really opened up Minneapolis to be really the inclusive place that it is today, would really want us, I believe, to be welcoming immigrants and making sure that we stood up for a young kid from Somalia or Colombia to be able to come here and build a future. I believe he would be telling us to disproportionately invest where there's disproportionate need. And I think more than anything else, he would also be somebody who says, in the wake of some of the tough things that are said about politicians, never forget the love and compassion that, to me, drove a man from South Dakota who came to Minneapolis, who was then given to the world, to do some great things. When I became mayor, one of the first things I did was ask around to see where's the attic, because I figured there's some room, dusty place around here where I could go and I'd find Humphrey's old desk or some memento for there, and there's almost nothing in this city hall that reminds us of Humphrey, except there's one credenza, and we have that in a room that's our conference room that we now call the Humphrey Room, and that matters a lot. But the thing that means a lot to me is the statue of Humphrey. I have walked by that statue, walking in and out of the buildings in some really tough moments when, you know, some horrible thing has happened, where a bridge has collapsed or a kid has been shot or some other tough issue. And there's a certain comfort I have knowing that this great man once sat in the office that I'm fortunate enough to sit in, and somehow he was able to navigate through it all. And I think for the scores of people who've been here since him, it reminds us that some person took a relatively small office of mayor of Minneapolis and used it as a platform to open up the country and then the world. Hubert Humphrey had an incredible legacy, and some of the people who surrounded him went on to do great things. Walter Mondale, Don Fraser, the list goes on. But what I really thought was wonderful about Humphrey was that he also made sure that people felt very special, even if they weren't a big deal. My dad ran the Walgreens at 9th and Nicollet, and any pharmacist in this city loved Humphrey because Humphrey was a pharmacist. And so my dad was a Republican, but in our house growing up, this picture always hung there. It was the picture that Humphrey signed to my dad, and I'm sure Humphrey just walked into the drugstore a couple times. It's my dad. Humphrey was his best friend, and this is something I keep in my office from the day I was born. It was sent to my parents, and it just says, you know, this young man is off to a good start. He'll undoubtedly be an all-American fullback. Well, I didn't quite get that far, but I did thankfully get to occupy the job that he once had, and it's an incredible honor to do that because I don't think anybody can ever live up to the legacy of one of the greatest Minnesotans of all time.